My name is Harper, and I'm 32 years old. I built a successful career as a financial advisor despite my difficult past. Growing up, my sister Madeline's jealousy and manipulation were constant shadows over my life. What I never expected was that one devastating accusation would tear my family apart completely. After years of no contact, they suddenly reappeared in my life, facing homelessness and expecting my help. The same people who abandoned me when I needed them most now wanted me to be their savior. Before I tell you my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If you could hit the like and subscribe buttons while you share that in the comments, I'd really appreciate your support as we dive into this painful journey together. I grew up in a modest suburban neighborhood outside Boston. Our family wasn't wealthy, but we were comfortable. My father James worked in construction, putting in long hours to provide for us. My mother Diana taught at the local elementary school, always bringing home stories about her students. From the outside, we probably looked like the perfect American family. My grandparents lived just a few blocks away, which was a blessing I didn't fully appreciate until I was older. Grandpa William was a retired accountant who had carefully saved throughout his life. He had a calm, methodical approach to everything that I later realized I had inherited. Grandma Eleanor was more emotional and expressive, but equally loving. Their home became my sanctuary as childhood progressed. Madeline came along when I was 3. At first, I was excited to have a little sister, someone to play with and care for. But as we grew, a troubling dynamic developed. Madeline quickly learned that displaying vulnerability got her attention and special treatment. Where I was naturally independent and responsible, she cultivated a fragility that had my parents constantly worried and focused on her. "Harper, you need to be more understanding of your sister," became my mother's refrain whenever conflict arose. "She's more sensitive than you are." What my parents interpreted as sensitivity, I experienced as manipulation. By the time I was 10 and Madeline 7, the pattern was firmly established. If Madeline wanted something I had, she would wait until I wasn't around, take it, and then claim I had taken something of hers. When confronted with both our stories, my parents almost always sided with her. "Harper, you're older. You should know better." My father would say, his disappointment cutting deep. School became my refuge. I excelled academically, earning praise from teachers that I rarely received at home. My natural aptitude for math and logical thinking set me apart. While my academic achievements were acknowledged by my parents, they were always tempered with comments about not making Madeline feel bad about her average grades. "Not everyone can be a math genius," my mother would say after I brought home another A+. "Don't brag around your sister." I never did brag. In fact, I learned to downplay my successes at home, saving my genuine excitement for conversations with Grandpa William. He recognized my potential early and became my biggest cheerleader. "You've got a good head for numbers, Harper," he told me when I was 12 after I'd explained a complex math concept I'd learned. "You could go far with that mind of yours." His basement office became my favorite place. While Grandma Eleanor baked cookies upstairs, Grandpa would show me how to balance checkbooks, explain investment concepts, and tell stories about his accounting career. These moments planted the seeds for my future. As Madeline and I moved into our teen years, her tactics became more sophisticated. She began orchestrating situations that would make me look bad. Once, she broke my mother's favorite vase while I was studying upstairs. By the time I came down, she had crafted a story about how I had been careless. I walked into a conversation already decided against me. "I didn't even come downstairs," I protested, confused and hurt. "Stop lying," Madeline said, tears streaming down her face. "You're always trying to get me in trouble." My parents grounded me for a week. This pattern repeated with missing jewelry, damaged items, and even money disappearing from my mother's purse. Each time, Madeline's tearful accusations trumped my bewildered denials. I started documenting everything. I kept a journal noting when I was home, when I was out, what interactions occurred. I became vigilant about protecting my possessions and creating alibis. It wasn't a normal way for a teenager to live, but it was survival. Grandma and Grandpa noticed the dynamics, though they were careful about how they intervened. My grandmother once tried speaking to my mother about the pattern she observed, but it only created tension between them. "You always favored Harper," my mother accused her own mother. "You don't understand how difficult Madeline's life is." After that, my grandparents became more subtle in their support. Their home remained my safe haven, the one place where I wasn't constantly defending myself or walking on eggshells. "Some people take longer to grow up," Grandpa William told me after a particularly bad incident when I was 16. "Your sister might need more time to mature, but don't let her problems become yours. Keep your eyes on your own path." Those words became my mantra as I navigated the challenging terrain of my family relationships. I focused on school, on building a future that would give me independence, and on nurturing the supportive relationship with my grandparents that sustained me through the hardest times. By my senior year of high school, the divide in our family was clear. I had become the outsider, the one who didn't quite fit the family narrative. But with my grandparents' emotional support and my own determination, I was preparing for a life beyond the confines of that difficult dynamic. The day my acceptance letter from Northeastern University arrived with a substantial scholarship offer was both the happiest and most conflicted day of my young life. I had applied without telling my parents, knowing they expected me to attend community college locally like Madeline planned to do. "Harper, that's wonderful news," my father said when I finally shared it at dinner, his initial smile fading as he processed the implications. "But Boston is expensive even with a scholarship. We can't afford to help much." "I've been saving from my part-time jobs," I explained. "And I'll work while studying. I can make this work." My mother's reaction was less enthusiastic. "I don't understand why you need to go so far. The community college has business courses too." What went unspoken was their real concern: who would be the responsible one at home if I left? Who would be the counterbalance to Madeline's chaos? Madeline, then 17, didn't hide her feelings. "Of course, Precious Harper gets a scholarship," she muttered. "Now she can think she's better than all of us." Later that night, I called my grandparents with the news. Their genuine excitement was everything I needed. "I knew you could do it," Grandpa William said, pride evident in his voice. "Your grandmother and I want to help. We've been setting aside a college fund for you." Their financial support, kept secret from my parents, who would have insisted they help Madeline equally, made my dream possible. When August came, I packed my belongings with a mixture of excitement and guilt. My mother's tight smile and my father's distracted goodbye at the airport contrasted sharply with my grandparents' warm embraces and whispered encouragements. College life was transformative. For the first time, I existed in an environment where I wasn't defined by family dynamics or constantly on the defensive. My roommate Jessica became the first true friend I'd ever had. Observing her healthy relationship with her family during weekend visits to her home showed me what normal family interactions could look like. "Your parents actually ask about your opinions?" I asked Jessica after watching her discuss politics with her father without tension or judgment. "Of course," she replied, looking puzzled. "Don't yours?" Those moments of contrast helped me understand that what I had experienced wasn't normal or healthy. With this awareness came both grief and liberation. I maintained weekly phone calls with my grandparents, conversations that nourished my spirit. Calls home were less frequent and more strained. My parents seemed primarily concerned with practical matters. Was I eating properly, attending all my classes? While Madeline rarely came to the phone at all. During holiday breaks when I returned home, the old patterns quickly resurfaced. Madeline had started community college but was struggling with basic courses. My presence seemed to aggravate her insecurities. "Not everyone gets things handed to them like you do," she snapped when I mentioned an internship opportunity I was pursuing. I tried to explain that nothing had been handed to me, that each opportunity had come from hard work and persistence. But my words fell on deaf ears. The narrative of Harper the privileged one versus Madeline the struggling underdog was too entrenched to challenge. By my junior year, I had secured a prestigious summer internship at a financial advisory firm in Boston. The firm had already hinted at a job offer following graduation if all went well. My grandparents celebrated this news with me, while my parents responded with muted congratulations. "Just don't forget where you came from," my father warned, as if success might make me abandon them. During that same period, Madeline dropped out of community college after 3 semesters of poor grades and sporadic attendance. She moved back home full-time and cycled through retail jobs, never keeping one for more than a few months. The contrast in our paths was becoming more pronounced, creating an ever-widening gulf. It was also during my junior year that my grandfather's health began to decline. What started as occasional shortness of breath was diagnosed as congestive heart failure. Each visit home found him a little frailer, though his mind remained sharp. "Don't worry about me," he insisted during our phone calls. "Focus on finishing strong. I'm proud of you, Harper." Those words sustained me through the challenging final semesters of college as I balanced academic excellence with concern for my grandfather's health. I didn't know then how important those final conversations with him would be, or how they would shape the dramatic events to come. I graduated summa cum laude with my business degree specializing in financial planning. The advisory firm where I'd interned made good on their promise, offering me an entry-level position with a clear path to advancement. Within 6 months, I had saved enough to move from the shared apartment with Jessica to my own small but comfortable place in a safer neighborhood. My independence felt hard-won and precious. Each month that I paid my own rent and utilities, each time I made a decision without justifying it to anyone, I felt myself healing from the constant scrutiny and judgment that had characterized my childhood. Meanwhile, Madeline's situation deteriorated. Now 22, she continued living at home, contributing minimally to household expenses while cycling through jobs at local shops and restaurants. My parents' approaching retirement age seemed resigned to her permanent presence in their home. "Your sister is just finding herself," my mother explained during one of our increasingly rare phone conversations. "Not everyone has their path figured out as early as you did." The concerning calls about my grandfather became more frequent that year. His heart condition had worsened, requiring hospitalization several times. During one particularly severe episode in February, I took emergency leave from work and flew home. The hospital room became the setting for uncomfortable family reunions. My parents, Madeline, Grandma Eleanor, and I attempted civility for my grandfather's sake, but tensions simmered beneath polite exchanges. Madeline made a point of dramatically emotional displays when medical staff entered, positioning herself as the devastated granddaughter, while I maintained the composure my grandfather had always valued. When his condition stabilized somewhat, most of the family returned to work and normal routines. I, however, requested a 2-week leave from my firm to help Grandma Eleanor with his care. Those weeks became some of the most precious of my life. During quiet afternoons, when my grandmother went home to rest, Grandpa William and I had conversations that went deeper than ever before. Despite his physical weakness, his mind remained clear and his wisdom intact. "I've watched you grow into an extraordinary woman, Harper," he told me during one of those private talks. "You've overcome so much, and you've done it with dignity." He spoke about his own life, about regrets and triumphs, and about the importance of financial security. Then, 3 days before I was scheduled to return to Boston, he broached a subject that clearly had been weighing on him. "I've made some changes to my will," he said, his voice tired but determined. "I want you to know about them before anyone else does." "Grandpa, we don't need to talk about this," I protested, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "We do," he insisted. "I've watched how hard you've worked, how responsibly you've managed every opportunity, And I've observed other things too, patterns in the family that concern me. He explained that he had restructured his estate, leaving the bulk of his savings and his house to me, with provisions for Grandma Eleanor's care. My parents and Madeline would receive only token amounts. Your grandmother understands my reasoning, though it pains her to acknowledge the problems. You'll face resistance, Harper, but I trust your judgment. Use these resources wisely and don't let guilt cloud your decisions. I left his hospital room that day with a heavy heart, understanding that he was entrusting me with more than money and property. He was giving me his vote of confidence and the means to secure my future independence. 2 months later, my grandfather passed away peacefully with Grandma Eleanor at his side. I flew home immediately for the funeral, grief-stricken, but grateful for those final conversations. The funeral service was subdued and dignified, reflecting my grandfather's character. The reading of the will, however, was anything but peaceful. When the lawyer announced the distribution of assets with the house and bulk of savings going to me, the room erupted. "This can't be right," my father said, looking shocked. "Dad wouldn't have cut us out like this. Harper must have manipulated him when he was vulnerable." Madeline immediately accused, turning to our grandmother. "You can't possibly support this." Grandma Eleanor looked torn, but spoke firmly. "William was of sound mind. He made his decisions carefully, as he did everything in life." My mother's expression was a mixture of hurt and anger. "After all we've done for you, Harper, how could you do this to your own family?" "I didn't do anything," I responded calmly, though my heart was racing. "Grandpa made his own decisions. He told me he values financial responsibility and wanted to support the path I've chosen." The argument escalated with Madeline dramatically crying about betrayal and my parents demanding explanations that would make sense of their perceived injustice. Eventually, after hours of circular accusations, we reached an uneasy truce. I promised to consider family needs when deciding what to do with the inheritance, while maintaining that I would respect my grandfather's wishes. As we parted ways that day, I couldn't shake the feeling that this temporary peace wouldn't last. My grandfather's final gift had set in motion events that would soon force every family relationship to its breaking point. In the months following my grandfather's passing, I channeled my grief into action. I continued excelling at work, where my focus on client needs earned me recognition and a small promotion. On weekends, I traveled to my grandparents' house, now legally mine, to help Grandma Eleanor sort through decades of memories and begin renovations that would make the house more comfortable for her. "Your grandfather always said you had good judgment," she told me as we reviewed quotes from contractors. "I see that now more than ever." Our relationship deepened during this period. Without my parents and Madeline present, Grandma seemed more relaxed, more willing to acknowledge family dynamics that she had previously overlooked. She shared stories about my mother's childhood patterns of behavior that helped me better understand the origins of our family's dysfunction. 3 months after the funeral, I was settling into a new normal. The inheritance had been transferred to my accounts, carefully invested, according to principles my grandfather had taught me. The house renovations were progressing well. My career trajectory looked promising. Then Madeline showed up unannounced at my apartment door on a rainy Tuesday evening. "I need a place to stay," she said, mascara streaking down her face. "Just for a few days until I figure things out." Despite our history, despite all the warning bells, she was still my sister. I reluctantly agreed, making up the sofa bed in my small home office. "What happened?" I asked as I handed her a towel to dry her hair. "Lost my job again," she mumbled, "and had a huge fight with Mom and Dad. They're being completely unreasonable about me needing to pay rent. Like, where am I supposed to get money without a job?" The irony that she had come to me, who had been paying my own way since college, wasn't lost on either of us, but I let it pass. Family is complicated, I told myself. Maybe this could be a fresh start. For the first few days, Madeline was on her best behavior. She kept her things tidy, offered to cook dinner once, and spoke about applying for new jobs. But by the end of the week, troubling signs emerged. I'd come home to find my personal items moved, desk drawers left open, closet doors ajar. "Were you looking for something in my office?" I asked after finding papers on my desk rearranged. "Just borrowing a pen?" she replied too quickly. "Sorry if I messed up your perfect organization system." I began locking my file cabinet where I kept important documents. I noticed Madeline taking late-night phone calls in whispered tones, ending conversations abruptly when I entered the room. The old feeling of having to be vigilant in my own space came rushing back. 10 days into her stay, I returned early from work, feeling unwell, only to find Madeline at my desk with my financial documents spread out before her. Among them were papers related to my grandfather's estate. "What are you doing?" I demanded, shock quickly turning to anger. She jumped, caught in the act. "I was just curious about what Grandpa left you," she said defensively. "It's not fair that you get everything while the rest of us get practically nothing. That was Grandpa's decision, not mine, and it doesn't give you the right to go through my private papers." The argument escalated quickly. Years of resentment poured out from both sides. "You've always thought you're better than everyone else," Madeline spat. "Perfect Harper with her perfect grades and perfect job. You turned Grandpa against us." "I never did anything except work hard and be responsible," I countered. "Maybe if you tried that sometime, instead of expecting everyone to take care of you forever, you'd understand why Grandpa trusted me with his estate." Her face contorted with rage. "You're going to regret this," she threatened, grabbing her hastily packed bag. "You have no idea what I'm capable of." I changed the locks the next morning, but the damage was already done. 2 days later, police officers appeared at my door with questions about financial documents from my grandfather's estate. According to the official report Madeline had filed, I had systematically manipulated my grandfather during his illness, forged documents to change his will, and stolen money that rightfully belonged to the entire family. The accusations were absurd, but they had to be investigated. I immediately contacted a lawyer, Sandra Reeves, who specialized in estate disputes. She assured me that with proper documentation, we could disprove these allegations. What she couldn't prepare me for was the family fallout. My parents called that evening not to check if I was okay, or to question Madeline's claims, but to condemn me. "How could you betray the family like this?" my mother demanded, her voice shaking with anger. "Your grandfather would be ashamed." "I didn't do any of the things Madeline is claiming," I tried to explain. "The will reflects Grandpa's wishes, which he explained to me before he passed. You can ask Grandma Eleanor." "We already spoke to your grandmother," my father cut in coldly. "She's devastated by what's coming to light. Even she believes you may have taken advantage of your grandfather's condition." My heart sank. Grandma Eleanor, my last ally in the family, had turned against me too. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. "There's going to be a family meeting tomorrow at the house," my father continued. "You should be there to explain yourself if you have any explanation." The meeting was worse than I could have anticipated. I arrived at my parents' home to find not just my immediate family, but several aunts, uncles, and cousins gathered in grim solidarity. Madeline sat in the center of the living room, eyes red from crying, the perfect picture of a victim. "I never wanted it to come to this," she said when I entered, voice breaking. "I just wanted what's fair." For the next 2 hours, I was subjected to accusations from all sides. Family members I had only seen at holidays now felt entitled to judge my character, to reinterpret every interaction I'd ever had with my grandfather through the lens of manipulation and greed. Grandma Eleanor sat quietly in the corner, avoiding my gaze. When she finally spoke, Her words sealed my isolation. "William changed in his final months," she said softly. "I thought it was just the illness, but now I wonder if he was being influenced. The division of assets doesn't reflect the man I knew for 60 years. No amount of defending myself made a difference. Minds were made up before I had entered the room. The narrative was set: Harper, the manipulative granddaughter who had taken advantage of a dying man's vulnerability for financial gain. As the meeting concluded, my father delivered the final blow. "Until this is resolved legally, we think it's best if you don't contact any of us," he said, not meeting my eyes. "If you have any decency left, you'll make this right and return what belongs to the family." I walked out of that house knowing I had just lost every blood relative I had. The only thing that kept me standing was the certainty of my innocence and the memory of my grandfather's faith in me. The legal investigation would freeze my assets, including the inherited property, for months. But the family bonds had been severed in an afternoon, with no prospect of being unfrozen, no matter what the courts ultimately decided. The 6 months following my family's rejection were the darkest period of my life. The legal investigation into Madeline's accusations consumed my time, energy, and financial resources. My assets related to the inheritance were frozen, meaning I couldn't access the funds or make decisions about the house. Attorney fees mounted quickly, straining my regular income. The professional reputation I had carefully built began to suffer as rumors circulated. Clients requested different advisors. My manager called me in for an uncomfortable conversation about personal distractions affecting my work. Though I wasn't fired, I was removed from key accounts until the legal situation was resolved. "We're not judging you," my manager said unconvincingly. "But this is a business built on trust, and right now, there's a cloud over your name." Jessica proved to be a true friend during this period, offering her sofa on nights when I couldn't bear to be alone, listening without judgment as I processed the betrayal. Other friends gradually distanced themselves, uncomfortable with the family drama or believing Madeline's version of events that had begun circulating through mutual acquaintances. "People who leave at the first sign of trouble aren't real friends anyway," Jessica told me one evening as we shared takeout in her apartment. "You're finding out who actually deserves a place in your life." My attorney, Sandra, worked tirelessly to build my defense. She obtained medical records confirming my grandfather was of sound mind when he revised his will. She interviewed the lawyer who had drafted the documents, confirming there had been no undue influence. Most importantly, she initiated a thorough investigation into Madeline's financial history. "Your sister has a pattern of behavior that undermines her credibility," Sandra explained during one of our meetings. "Multiple employers report missing funds during her employment. She has a history of credit card fraud. And most damning, we found evidence she attempted to access your grandfather's accounts herself before his death." The investigation revealed that Madeline had actually attempted to forge our grandfather's signature on financial documents 3 months before he died, when he was briefly hospitalized. A bank employee had flagged the suspicious transaction and declined it. This evidence became the cornerstone of my defense. After 6 grueling months, the case was dismissed. The judge's ruling was clear: there was no evidence of wrongdoing on my part, and substantial evidence of attempted fraud by Madeline. I was vindicated legally, but the emotional damage remained unaddressed. I expected that the dismissal of the case and the evidence against Madeline might prompt some reconciliation with my family. I was wrong. When I called my parents to tell them the outcome, my mother answered and quickly passed the phone to my father once she recognized my voice. "The courts don't know everything," he said stiffly. "We know our daughters. Madeline has always been honest with us." "Dad, the evidence showed that she tried to forge Grandpa's signature," I said, disbelief coloring my voice. "The case was dismissed because there was proof of her fraud, not mine." "Evidence can be manipulated," he replied. "Unless you're willing to do the right thing and share the inheritance as your grandfather would have wanted, we have nothing more to discuss." The conversation ended there with no acknowledgement of the pain they had caused me, no apology for believing the worst about me without evidence. Grandma Eleanor had moved in with my parents during the investigation, and they wouldn't let me speak with her when I called. Depression settled over me like a heavy fog. Despite legal vindication, I felt like I'd lost everything that mattered. My family was gone. My professional reputation was damaged. My financial security was compromised by legal fees. Even the house that held so many positive memories with my grandfather now seemed tainted. I began seeing Dr. Powell, a therapist who specialized in family estrangement. Our weekly sessions became anchors in the stormy sea of my emotions. "What you're experiencing is a form of complicated grief," she explained. "You're mourning not just the loss of these relationships, but the loss of who you thought these people were." Through therapy, I began to understand that my family's reaction had never really been about the inheritance. It was the culmination of dysfunctional patterns that had existed since my childhood. Madeline's accusation had simply provided the catalyst for a break that had been forming for years. "Sometimes family systems depend on certain roles remaining fixed," Dr. Powell explained. "Your success and independence threatened the family narrative. Your grandfather's decision to recognize your responsibility validated a truth they weren't ready to accept." Slowly, I began rebuilding. I sold my grandfather's house, finding it too painful to keep despite winning the right to it. I used part of the proceeds to clear my legal debts, then invested the remainder carefully, just as my grandfather had taught me. With my professional reputation still compromised in Boston, I made the difficult decision to relocate. Seattle offered both distance and opportunity, a growing market for financial advisors and a chance to start fresh where no one knew the painful history I carried. Before leaving, I made one last attempt to see my grandmother, sending a letter explaining the move and asking for a brief meeting. I received no response. The silence confirmed what I needed to know moving forward, meant accepting that my past could not be fixed or redeemed. It could only be learned from. As I boarded the plane to Seattle that autumn morning, I carried with me my grandfather's lessons about financial security, Dr. Powell's guidance on emotional healing, and the hard-won knowledge of my own resilience. Everything else I left behind. 5 years passed in Seattle, years of gradual healing and rebuilding. The distance, both geographical and emotional, from my family allowed me to focus on creating a life defined by my own values rather than reaction to family dysfunction. Professionally, I thrived. Starting as a senior financial advisor at a respected firm, I worked diligently to establish a new reputation based on integrity and client success. By the 3rd year, I had built such a strong client base that I was able to launch my own boutique financial advisory practice, specializing in helping clients navigate significant life transitions with financial wisdom. "You have a gift for making people feel secure during uncertain times," one client told me after I helped her reorganize her finances following a difficult divorce. "It's like you understand exactly what it means to rebuild from scratch." I did understand more intimately than she knew. My own rebuilding extended beyond career to creating a chosen family of loyal friends. My colleague Thomas and his husband David became like brothers to me. My neighbor Amara, a pediatric surgeon with a similar family estrangement story, became the sister I wished I'd had. We celebrated holidays together, supported each other through challenges, and created new traditions that honored our chosen connections. With my business thriving, I purchased a beautiful craftsman home in a peaceful neighborhood overlooking Puget Sound. The house represented not just financial success, but emotional security. A safe space entirely under my control, free from manipulation or judgment. Occasionally, news about my biological family reached me through distant connections. My parents had retired, downsizing to a smaller home to accommodate reduced income. Madeline continued living with them, still unmarried, and apparently still struggling to maintain steady employment. Grandma Eleanor had developed health problems but was being cared for by my parents. These updates arrived like dispatches from another life stirring complex emotions, but no longer the acute pain of fresh betrayal. Therapy with Dr. Powell continued via video sessions, evolving from crisis management to deeper exploration of how my family experiences had shaped my approach to relationships. Trust came slowly for me, especially in romantic connections. Several promising relationships ended when my carefully constructed walls proved too substantial for potential partners to navigate. Vulnerability isn't the same as weakness, Dr. Powell reminded me. The same protective mechanisms that helped you survive your family situation might be limiting your capacity for intimacy now. This insight led to the most challenging phase of my healing journey, learning to trust again. The breakthrough came unexpectedly through a client referral. Michael, a software engineer who had recently received an inheritance from his own grandparents, sought my professional guidance on responsible wealth management. Our professional relationship developed into friendship as we discovered shared experiences of family complexity. Like me, Michael had navigated difficult family dynamics, though, with less dramatic outcomes. His empathy came from genuine understanding rather than pity. When he eventually asked me to dinner in a context clearly not related to financial planning, I surprised myself by accepting. Our first date stretched from dinner to a long walk along the waterfront to breakfast the next morning, hours of conversation flowing effortlessly between us. "I've never met someone who understands boundaries as clearly as you do," he told me during that first date. "It's refreshing not to have to explain why family isn't always a simple blessing." Over the next year, Michael proved himself worthy of the trust I cautiously extended. He respected my pace, never pushed for more openness than I could offer, and demonstrated consistent reliability in both small promises and larger commitments. For the first time since my grandfather, I experienced what it meant to be truly seen and accepted. As our relationship deepened, I found myself creating the stable, loving life I had never experienced growing up. Michael's calm presence and emotional maturity helped heal parts of me I hadn't realized were still wounded. Together, we built a relationship based on mutual respect, clear communication, and genuine partnership. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday morning in March, an email arrived that shattered the careful separation I had maintained between past and present. The sender was my mother, the subject line simply "family situation." My finger hovered over the delete button, but something, curiosity, lingering attachment, or perhaps just the shock of this unexpected contact, made me open it instead. "Harper." The message began without greeting or warmth. "Your father has been diagnosed with congestive heart failure, the same condition that took your grandfather. Medical bills have depleted our savings, and we're facing foreclosure on the house. Madeline is still living with us and unable to contribute financially. We have nowhere else to turn. We need your help. Please contact us as soon as possible." No acknowledgement of the years of silence. No mention of the false accusations or family rejection. Just the expectation that family obligation would override everything that had happened. I closed my laptop without responding, emotions churning too violently for any immediate action. That evening, I shared the email with Michael, who listened thoughtfully before offering his perspective. "You don't owe them anything," he said simply. "Whatever you decide should be based on what brings you peace, not on obligation to people who abandoned you when you needed them most." The next day, I discussed the situation with Dr. Powell, who helped me examine my motivations and potential responses. "There's a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation," she explained. "You can forgive them for your own healing without reestablishing relationships that were harmful. Any decision to help financially can be made independently of emotional reconnection." After careful consideration, I composed a brief, neutral response requesting more information about their specific situation and suggesting a meeting at a neutral location to discuss options. The reply came quickly. They were 3 months behind on mortgage payments, medical bills exceeded $50,000, and my father could no longer work. They suggested meeting at a cafe halfway between Seattle and their current home. As I boarded the train for that meeting, I carried no illusions about emotional reconciliation. This would be a business transaction approached with the same clarity and boundaries I applied in my professional life. My grandfather's lessons about financial responsibility would guide me, not the emotional manipulation that had characterized my family relationships for so long. What I couldn't anticipate was how this encounter would bring my journey full circle, forcing me to make the most difficult decision of all: whether to save the people who had once left me to drown, or to finally close the door on the possibility of family reconciliation forever. The cafe where I arranged to meet my family was carefully chosen, public enough to discourage emotional scenes, but quiet enough for private conversation. I arrived 20 minutes early, selecting a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. Michael had offered to accompany me, but this was a conversation I needed to navigate alone. When they entered, my father noticeably frailer, my mother's hair completely gray, Madeline still recognizable despite gained weight. The years of separation collapsed into a moment of visceral recognition. These strangers were still somehow my family. "Harper," my mother said stiffly as they approached the table. No embrace was offered or expected. My father nodded silently, lowering himself carefully into a chair. His breathing was labored, confirming at least part of their story about his health. Madeline avoided eye contact, entirely examining her chipped nail polish as if it contained fascinating secrets. "Thank you for coming," I said, maintaining the professional tone I had practiced. "I'd like to understand your situation more completely before discussing potential solutions." What followed was a detailed account of their financial disaster. My father's medical condition had begun 2 years earlier, with symptoms he had ignored until a collapse at home forced hospitalization. Without adequate insurance, medical bills quickly accumulated. My mother had continued teaching until mandatory retirement age, but their savings had been minimal. The mortgage on their home had been refinanced multiple times over the years to cover various expenses, leaving them with substantial debt and little equity. "And what about you, Madeline?" I asked, addressing my sister directly for the first time. "Mom's email mentioned you're still living at home." She shrugged, finally meeting my eyes with a flash of the old defiance. "The job market is tough. I've had some opportunities that didn't work out." "Madeline has been a tremendous help with your father's care," my mother interjected quickly. "Not all contributions are financial." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral while internally noting that the old pattern of excusing Madeline's lack of responsibility remained intact. Some dynamics never change, even when circumstances do. "What exactly are you asking for?" I inquired, redirecting the conversation to practical matters. "We need about $80,000 to clear the medical debt and catch up on the mortgage." My father explained, his voice weaker than I remembered, but the entitlement unchanged. "We thought perhaps you could buy the house from us, let us continue living there, and then it would eventually be yours anyway as inheritance." The proposal was financially unsound and emotionally transparent. They wanted rescue without consequence, support without accountability. The professional advisor in me immediately identified the flaws in their plan, while the wounded daughter recognized the continuing assumption that I existed to solve their problems. "Before we discuss specific arrangements," I said carefully, "I think we need to address what happened 5 years ago." My mother's expression hardened. "That's all in the past. Families should help each other in times of need." "Is it in the past?" I pressed. "Because from where I'm sitting, there's been no acknowledgement of what was done to me, no apology for believing Madeline's false accusations, No recognition of how you all cut me off completely when I needed family support. Madeline shifted uncomfortably in her seat. My father looked away. We did what we thought was right at the time, my mother said defensively. If mistakes were made, they were made out of love for the family. The investigation proved that Madeline attempted to forge Grandpa's signature, I continued calmly. The evidence was clear enough for the case to be dismissed. Yet none of you ever acknowledged that or apologized. Are you really going to hold a grudge when your father is ill? My mother responded, expertly deflecting with guilt. What would your grandfather think of such pettiness? The mention of my grandfather solidified something in me. I thought of his final conversations with me, his recognition of the family patterns, his trust in my judgment. I thought of the years I had spent rebuilding my life, establishing healthy boundaries, and creating genuine relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation and manipulation. I'm willing to help, I said finally, but I have conditions. I laid out my offer clearly. I would pay for a modest 2-bedroom apartment rental for 1 year, providing a stable transition period. I would not purchase their house or assume their debts. The assistance came with 2 non-negotiable conditions, a formal acknowledgement from all of them regarding the false accusations, and a requirement that Madeline seek employment and contribute to household expenses within 3 months. You're putting conditions on helping your own family, my father asked incredulously. I'm offering assistance while maintaining healthy boundaries, I corrected. Something I've learned is essential in any relationship, especially family ones. Madeline's face flushed with anger. Still think you're better than everyone, don't you, Saint Harper, with her perfect life judging the rest of us mere mortals? This isn't about judgment, I replied evenly. It's about accountability. I'm offering genuine help, but I won't enable patterns that aren't healthy for any of us. My mother's expression shifted from hope to indignation as she realized I wouldn't simply write a blank check. After everything we did for you growing up, this is how you repay us. I'm offering what I can while respecting myself, I explained. That's the best anyone can do. The conversation deteriorated from there. My parents couldn't accept help that came with expectations of accountability. Madeline couldn't tolerate the suggestion that she should contribute financially. The meeting ended with my mother's tearful accusation that I had never truly been part of the family, that I had always been cold and calculating, just as they had always suspected. As I watched them leave the cafe, I felt an unexpected sense of peace settle over me. I had extended an olive branch with clear boundaries attached. Their rejection of those boundaries was final confirmation that the family dynamics were unchanged and unchangeable. I had done all I could while remaining true to my own healing. 3 months later, I received a brief email from a distant cousin informing me that my parents had indeed lost their house to foreclosure. They had moved into a small apartment in a less desirable neighborhood, with Madeline still dependent on them. The news stirred complex emotions, but not regret. I had offered reasonable help that honored both family connection and personal boundaries. Their choice to reject it was the final chapter in our shared story. That evening, Michael and I walked along the shore near our home, discussing the future we were building together. The ring in his pocket, which he would present later that night, represented a new kind of family connection, one built on mutual respect and genuine love rather than obligation and manipulation. I've been thinking about something my grandfather told me, I shared as we watched the sunset paint the water gold. He said that family is ultimately about patterns, patterns of behavior, patterns of communication, patterns of love, or its absence. Some patterns can't be changed because they're too deeply ingrained. But we can create new patterns, healthier ones, if we're brave enough to step outside the old circles. As Michael knelt on the sand, minutes later, Ring extended tears of joy replaced the tears of grief that had marked so much of my journey. I was creating a new pattern now, one built on the firm foundation of self-respect my grandfather had helped me establish. The family that had raised me had chosen their path just as I had chosen mine. In letting them face the consequences of their choices without rescuing them, I had finally completed my own rescue, not just from their manipulation, but from the lingering hope that they might someday become the family I had needed. Some debts can never be repaid. Some wounds never completely heal. But in choosing to build a future defined by love and respect rather than resentment and obligation, I had found the truest form of forgiveness. Not excusing the past, but refusing to let it determine my future. As I said yes to Michael's proposal, I silently thanked my grandfather for his final gift. Not the inheritance that had sparked such conflict, but the more valuable legacy of his wisdom, the understanding that we are not defined by the family we are born into, but by the family we choose to create. The year following my final meeting with my biological family brought profound healing and new beginnings. With Dr. Powell's guidance, I worked through the lingering guilt that occasionally surfaced, despite my rational understanding that I had made the right decision. Those feelings didn't disappear completely, but they lost their power to disrupt my peace. Guilt is often the final emotion to release when leaving dysfunctional family systems, Dr. Powell explained during one of our sessions. It's the last hook that keeps us tethered to unhealthy patterns. Recognizing it without being controlled by it is a sign of genuine healing. I channeled my energy into strengthening the connections that truly nourished me. My chosen family, Thomas and David Amara and other close friends, surrounded Michael and me with joy and support as we planned our wedding. These relationships, built on mutual respect and genuine care, showed me daily what family could and should be. Wedding preparations became an unexpected source of healing. Each decision, from the intimate guest list to the personalized vows, represented a conscious choice to create traditions that reflected our values rather than defaulting to conventional expectations. I never thought I'd actually look forward to wedding planning, I confessed to Michael one evening as we addressed invitations. I always imagined it would be fraught with family drama. "That's the beauty of chosen family," he replied. "We get to decide who shares our important moments." My professional life evolved alongside my personal growth. The experience with my family had deepened my understanding of the emotional dimensions of financial decision-making. I expanded my practice to include a special focus on helping clients navigate financial situations complicated by family dynamics, inheritance disputes, divorce transitions, and estrangement scenarios. You have a unique perspective that most financial advisors lack, a new client told me after I helped her establish boundaries with financially abusive parents. You understand that money decisions are never just about money. This specialized focus not only proved financially rewarding, but profoundly meaningful. Each client I helped to establish healthy financial boundaries felt like a small redemption of my own painful experience. I also established a scholarship program at my alma mater specifically for students who were navigating higher education without family support. The annual selection process, reviewing applications from young people whose stories often echoed aspects of my own, became one of the most fulfilling parts of my year. When not working or planning the wedding, I volunteered with a support organization for individuals experiencing family estrangement. The group provided both practical resources and emotional validation for people making the difficult decision to limit or end contact with family members. Sharing my story in this context, seeing the relief in others' eyes when they realized they weren't alone, transformed my painful past into a resource for others. Your willingness to be transparent about your journey gives others permission to prioritize their own well-being, the group facilitator told me. That's an incredible gift. Throughout this period of growth and giving back, I maintained the firm boundaries I had established with my biological family. There were no further direct communications after our cafe meeting. Occasional updates still reached me through extended family connections, but these no longer triggered the emotional turbulence they once had. As our wedding day approached, Michael and I had a thoughtful discussion about whether to send invitations to my parents and sister. We decided against it, recognizing that genuine reconciliation would require acknowledgement and changed behavior that had not been demonstrated. Relationships require reciprocity, Michael observed. You can't build a bridge from only one side. The wedding itself was everything I had once thought impossible, a joyful celebration surrounded by people who truly saw and supported me. As I exchanged vows with Michael on a perfect Seattle spring day, I felt my grandfather's presence more strongly than I had since his passing. I could almost hear his voice approving of the life I had built, the boundaries I had established, and the love I had found. In the months that followed, Michael and I settled into married life with an ease that still sometimes surprised me. Having grown up in an environment of constant tension and walking on eggshells, the peaceful partnership we created felt almost revolutionary. "Is this what normal families feel like?" I asked Michael one Sunday morning as we lingered over coffee, planning our day without drama or hidden agendas. "I think this is what healthy families feel like," he corrected gently. "Normal is just whatever you're used to. We're creating something better than normal." The final piece of my healing journey came unexpectedly through a conversation with Dr. Powell about forgiveness. "People often misunderstand forgiveness," she explained. "They think it means excusing harmful behavior or pretending it never happened. True forgiveness is acknowledging the full reality of what occurred while choosing to release its power over your present and future." "I'm not sure I can ever forgive them completely," I admitted. "Forgiveness isn't for them," she replied. "It's for you, and it doesn't require reconciliation or continued relationship. Sometimes the most loving choice for all involved is to forgive from a distance." This perspective shifted something fundamental in me. I realized I had been carrying the weight of unforgiveness not as a shield, but as a burden. Gradually, I began the process of forgiving my family, not to excuse their actions or open myself to further harm, but to free myself from the emotional tether that kept part of me anchored in pain. The forgiveness I ultimately found wasn't dramatic or complete. It was quiet and imperfect, a gentle release rather than a grand absolution. I forgave them for being unable to be the family I needed. I forgave them for believing what was easiest rather than what was true. I forgave them for choosing comfort over growth, for preferring familiar dysfunction over challenging change. Most importantly, I forgave myself for wanting their approval, for doubting my worth when they withdrew their love, for the years I spent trying to earn acceptance that should have been freely given. This internal reconciliation brought a peace that external reconciliation never could have. By accepting the reality of who my family was, rather than clinging to who I wished they could be, I found freedom from expectations that would never be met. Today, I define family on my own terms. It includes Michael, our close friends, the clients whose financial journeys I guide, and the estranged individuals whose paths I help illuminate. It includes my grandfather's memory and the wisdom he imparted. It includes, in a complex way, the lessons learned from those who showed me what family should not be. The inheritance that caused such conflict ultimately provided the foundation for a life beyond what I could have imagined during those dark days of accusation and abandonment. Not just financially, but in the deeper inheritance of my grandfather's belief in me when no one else did. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect your own well-being, Even when others labeled you selfish for doing so, I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing and sharing it with someone who might need to hear that. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and others, is to establish clear boundaries. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that the family you choose can bring healing. The family you were born into never could.